agus fáilte ascu trí seascad, den program ag BBC Alba ha dalgu cría spórs an ban h-Alba agus urnan bhna stair fall cúteach. Ha sin in sé program 3G cruin agus ha corta rin gomór I bhí thsúcah scilch na bar nich ingantach an an salespórs na Halba. Is me Iona Ballantyne agus ha mi toidir ra gohfuil si babh se chluich rugby ar son Alba Louise Dalgliesh callrooms in studio. Ar y program yn och, Cluinnidh sin bhfuil cluicheadair rugby na Halba Màiri McDonald. Bhríonn sin sé a chluich hockey ar son Alba Kerry-Anne Hastings agus fér sin súlráis ar dagam cútramach ar son skip h-Alba-náiseanta na ban. Louise, welcome to 360.
Thanks for having me.
Can you just bring us back to the start about your career and actually how you got involved in rugby?
I think from starting at a small village primary school where we had to get bussed into a primary school and a larger primary school in Hawick to do any PE, it was quite probably an interesting start. The first time I kind of was involved in any sports. I think moving on for primary 6 and 7, we went into the larger school, we moved up to that school, and that was probably the first time that I took part in I think it was Newman's rugby at that time, so it was one of the variations of rugby that they put in place to encourage more people to take part, and particularly for younger people, and I think that was probably the first time I touched the rugby ball as part of a team. So yeah, it kind of all stemmed from there.
And then what about your international career? Because you did also play quite a bit with Scotland.
Yes, so moving on, I suppose played for Hawick Ladies through my time kind of later years in school, moved across to represent Melrose Ladies, and then took a step that a lot of us take, I think, to play for Edinburgh University. And following that, there was various opportunities through the Scottish under-23 squad as it was then, Scottish students, and how those squads all operated at that point. And from there was selected to travel to Sweden in 2003 for a training camp, and was fortunate to receive my first cap against Sweden in that summer. So that's where it started, and then yeah, hung about for a few years after that.
What was your time with Scotland like? I mean, what were your career highlights from that?
I think I was involved for probably around about kind of 10 years in total, not always you know, in the squad, but just in and out over that early years particularly. Was really fortunate. One of the big standouts is the 2006 World Cup, being able to go across to Edmonton in Canada, represent Scotland in a World Cup, and we also played against New Zealand in the pool stages of that competition. So to have that, and my mum and her partner had flown out, so you know, having them there, a real highlight and a positive memory for me from the kind of the sporting career. So that was certainly one of them.
And when you were playing with Scotland, I mean, over those sort of 10 years, did you see it change much over that time?
Yes, I think I was probably somebody who saw quite a lot of transition points through Scotland women's rugby and what that looked like. When I first became involved in the squad, there was a lot of experienced players, there was a lot of players who had represented Scotland for quite a long time, and we were very much punching above our weight as a country at that stage. You know, in that World Cup, we were in a 5th, 6th place playoff. We were regularly beating quite a lot of the Six Nations opposition, and then I think, you know, as other countries moved on, as rugby developed globally, we saw quite a lot of transitions and dropping off maybe from some of the competitive levels that we'd reached previously, less people playing, people retiring, going to other things, and then as I was, I think, reaching the end of my career, seeing things really starting to pick up again, which was obviously a positive point to leave the squad and see that it was again going in the right direction, and looking at where they are now, it's obviously continued on that trajectory.
And I guess the thing for you personally is that throughout all this time playing rugby, you also had a full-time career. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, as many of the girls still do, and a lot of people still work with across the sport. I was a kind of qualified teacher, went through the PE route, and then laterally into guidance. But my NQT year at Berwickshire High School, the first experience of having to juggle the first year of a profession, trying to learn a career and be successful in that, but also was selected to go to European Championships in France and my first Six Nations in 2004. So that was the first experience I had of trying to manage that, you know, life balance with rugby, with the training and with everything that came with it. So fortunately, right through my rugby career, the schools that I've been employed by, the departments that I've worked with, have always been extremely supportive. They've gone the extra mile, they've covered classes, they've allowed me the time off school if it's been required for Six Nations and for competition. So have always been really fortunate in that, was always really fortunate in that situation.
Brilliant, well we will be hearing more from you shortly. Van Louise Coleraine an sofan seachcin seos mini sin go McCorgan thoisich le nach a buntaimrí rugby. Chorá maní ní gáil fata arún éidir eadar-nàiseanta agus Harry bhí géisciún mun slí Harry bhí gáil an a rugby.
Gannéal an fachcail támailte chláirte go leor a thuh chud dúlaí sa bheith an bliana fichiad do scipa bhildanig rugby na Hallpa. Ach do Màiri Dhòmhnallach, dé a chluich na 8 minútin is fad an únhéanna gemichin na seachtriacht do scipa náiseanta ó hiún gilid an naon rang. Tá an bliana sa gutúr idir mar a háisí cúsin an the rugby.
I first started when I was about 13, playing for my secondary school. And my PE teacher just got me into the sport. My PE teacher and my history teacher were really big rugby fans, so they were really enthusiastic to get us out on the pitch and just have fun. Going to the after school club with a couple of friends just for a laugh to get out of school mainly. Just playing sport outside was good fun. And then joined my local rugby club Hillhead with a few of my mates and continued on from there. I'm playing it there ever since, so it's good. For me, like playing at Hills was huge because there was big players there that played for Scotland at the time, like Lindsay Smith and people like that. So for me to see those kind of players where I was an eye-opener to see what I could potentially do when I was older. So from playing under 15s there to under 18s through to the seniors really helped me and my journey in rugby. So yeah, when I started playing under 18s, I maybe thought I could take it a bit more serious, and then senior rugby was quite a big jump up, obviously quite small, so playing with the big ones was yeah, a step up for me and I enjoyed it, so decided to carry on, take it further.
Get a high big, can you Màiri a chichu from two physical and yeah?
Yeah, I enjoy getting into it. Tackling's not my favourite, but it's all part of the sport, so when I'm in and around a game, like I love it. My mum always says to run away from people because she doesn't like to see me get hurt, but no, it's all part of the game and I do love it. Having the girls behind me like helping me out when I need to is nice as well. My parents are so supportive, they love it. Mum still can't really watch when I'm in tackling and contact and stuff, but yeah, she'll be cheering me on from the side.
Gleich Màiri is on a héadtar sa Alba an the rugby seachna, agus haid an bheach gur shot na bhuanachaí in the hula party in the game.
So the sevens was obviously a bigger pitch, less players in the field, so your catch pass needs to improve, your fitness, your physicality, because you need to cover obviously more ground. So yeah, that really improved my game, and of course like having the girls through age grade stuff and on sevens really pushed me forward.
An sa nulach, le game in naon Spáine father, Hanach Màiri is doig an squad slán agus chluiche is on a héadtar to skip na Hallpa. Bruidhinn go brach.
Obviously at the side of the pitch, the manager says you're going on, your heart's pounding out your chest, so obviously with Jenny Maxwell going down injured, it was hard to come onto because you don't want to see a teammate like go down and get hurt. But for me, going out onto the pitch, I just had to keep a level head, try control the game we're up. So it was nice to come on to us winning. Yeah, and just nerves, of course, but yeah, it was good. After that win, the belief went through the roof. We all believe in each other and what like everyone can do in the squad. But yeah, that win was a big one for us, and to secure that meant that we can push forward and we can see what we can really do and we can play well.
Sa ghearan an bliana, leis go Jenny Maxwell i de gorstachach, gará Màiri an dúil gan táiseach a game má leth-chaigeann an an immert ruach an farprasin siad dúchanin. Awn for a bhfuil Jeffer Heinchen aiche.
Yeah, excited, nervous, didn't really think it was going to happen that quickly. It was a shame losing Jenny because she's huge around the squad, you know, getting all the girls pumped up, so to step into that role was nerve-wracking, but with the belief of the team going forward, yeah, it was a good challenge.
Mach van de Dhòmhnallach is stay. Kan ik push tegen Albannach stay. Dus ik hier het score, is ik hier het voelje. Pass even of Màiri Dhòmhnallach is.
Looking back, obviously, games getting cancelled, called off. The girls really pulled together, and yeah, the belief again that we had in the squad meant that we could push our thoughts somewhere else, so focusing on the game next in hand instead of what's happened, so we're pushing away from the negatives onto the positives, what we can benefit from that.
Hips get the hip beschiet. Björn in the first goal. En is dat Cluicheadair. Machen en even Chaplin.
I gceann na dreuchd na hánach an bliana, agus a míhíns a leip na hada hí. Ha ada an skip a hás is ein troia go cúpan an crunne.
We've all got it in our minds, of course. That's the team's big goal, is to get there. There's players who can openly talk about it and are buzzing, can't stop talking about it really. But yeah, there's players who keep a bit more quiet, feet on the ground, just focusing on next game in hand so we can prepare our best we can for obviously the goal ahead. I think for everyone it would mean the world. It's a big, big goal, dream for everyone in the squad. So if we qualify, I think, yeah, everyone will be buzzing.
Agus da bhadaí, getrach ili iddi bhí thoisich ag eadar-nàiseanta son únefata. Ha dún an choramán meabhracha.
Yeah, sometimes I do. It doesn't feel real sometimes. So getting thrown in is obviously challenging in itself, but it's a good place to start because that's you and you have to do it. So looking back, I never thought I'd be where I am now. I always thought I was going out to the park for a bit of fun. That was it. So yeah, I think my schoolmates are a bit shocked when I'm still playing because obviously they're not. So yeah, it's a bit different, but it's good.
Louise, Màiri's having a great time with her career, almost a bit of a baptism of fire with her Scotland career.
Yeah, I think obviously the injury to Jenny Maxwell in that Spain game, she'd been establishing herself as the starting nine for Scotland after always kind of a lot of her experience at that point had been off the bench. So Màiri absolutely getting in there and starting the Six Nations, and I think watching that first Six Nations match, she didn't look out of place. She's got so many club mates from Hillhead in the squad and people who have probably known her for a long time now, that she was able to slot in and just, you know, look like she obviously deserved to be there and put in a really solid performance in her first game against Ireland, and she's just cracked on since then in everything that she's done.
How do you think she's coming on, especially in a position that you know very well?
I think she's coping. I think she's coping and playing really well. There's always going to be elements when you are playing nine for Scotland. You're sometimes under a little bit more pressure than perhaps nines for other countries. We don't have the biggest pack. We're not always on the front foot. So I think being able to manage that physicality, and for somebody that is Màiri's size, she handles that very well. She's feisty on the pitch. She can deal with a bit of niggle, and she goes out there, and her service is really improved as well. Just working on that, the quality and accuracy of her pass from probably when I first saw her play to where she is now. The work that she's been doing in her own time or with Tyrone or with the coaches, it's really showing on the pitch.
Because you do know Màiri and her family through your current role with Scottish Rugby, don't you?
Yeah, my coach in the Scottish Futures under-18s, Màiri's younger sister Carla is involved in that squad, and so has also been playing nine. So it's been, through my experience, doing a lot of the skills development work with Carla, and just hear how Màiri's responding to things, and you know, Carla kind of taking a lead from what Màiri's doing and seeing what she's achieved, and it's good for Carla as well to give her that kind of aspiration. And she's very close to her sister, so it's nice to see how they're both developing and staying in rugby and doing well.
Absolutely. And with Màiri saying in that video there about she started playing rugby at school, I mean, as a PE teacher, how important is it for you to sort of spot these talents and then develop them?
I think any PE teachers across the country, you can always see young people who are going to do well in sport, and I think the important thing is sometimes it's not necessarily the sport that they're doing at the time. You just see that element of competitiveness, the use of space, all the kind of factors that come in as young people are developing, and so the directing them to make sure that they are taking part in a sport out with school and to a club, and whether that's rugby or whether that's football or whether that's another sport. I think PE staff across the country are really good at that, and we'd always push young people to do their best and stay in a sport.
And if we just look at this Scotland squad, I mean, it has been a very frustrating season, like Màiri had mentioned. How do you think they're coping with this?
It's been very frustrating. I mean, one Six Nations game going ahead as scheduled is something that they would never ever have dreamt of having to deal with. So I think there's an element that the players have to remove themselves from everything that's going on, because ultimately what happens with the fixtures, what happens with any future games is absolutely out with their control. They just need to focus on themselves, and I think because they are quite a close squad, just in terms of the experience levels and how tight they are as a unit, they'll all be going away, they'll be doing their own training, they'll be training in their groups. Obviously some of the players who are playing in England are getting regular rugby at the moment. The players in Scotland are not, but they're getting, you know, skill sessions, or they're working together more. So I think they all know what their bigger goals are. They just need to keep doing that work in their small groups or individually to contribute to that big picture, and like I say, let that let everything that's happening out with that they can't control, just kind of let it go a little bit and try not to worry about it too much.
Because there is also that game next weekend. It was supposed to be against, this weekend actually, sorry, against Italy, which has also been postponed, and that was a hugely important game for them.
Yeah, I think we've spoken about the fact that the Six Nations fixtures were just kind of cancelled and called off, but that game against Italy, obviously with the dual role as a World Cup qualifier, hugely important, and I think taking that away from them, just in some ways it allows them not to have to worry about it again for a period of time. But they'll never be able to switch off for that until they actually do know what's happening. So it'll be a challenging time for them.
It will, but hopefully we'll see them in action soon.
Yeah.
Get the Hanaki h-Alba snaf agus rugby, ha Kerry-Anne Hastings at the nation slea sports at our Gaelic Lentil Ballantyne. Seann and Skillocky gisha.
Huad Kerry-Anne Hastings a hui an an hockey a shewigi a brahadech in Cluicheadair spores, a yanyan and service a huad na parentin les spores zela.
I'm not going to lie, I kind of followed my brother, so he actually was he started playing rugby, but he absolutely hated it, bless him. But he got picked because he was quick, and then eventually he saw there was a hockey stick, so he gave that a shot, and then I was like, oh, follow my brother, like, he's amazing. So I decided to follow in his footsteps, went to the same club as him, and we also both, we picked up athletics at the same time as well. I classically followed him again. So we were both competing at quite a high level at hockey and athletics, and then from there I had to make a decision when start getting a wee bit better in the hockey side of things. So it wasn't, mum and dad were amazing though. They didn't mind us not trying their sports and stuff. So mum was a swimmer, and dad was obviously rugby. But I did give swimming a try, and it just wasn't my forte. And then I've tried so many different sports. I was so fortunate to be brought up into getting exposed to different club levels. But yeah, hockey and athletics were the one for me, definitely.
As shewigi a cruach an a garstachug, huad Kerry-Anne a hiad hech baiche a nuddi. Ruta va uavasach sorrichtugi. I
was so shocked. And because basically, try and cut long story short, I had hip surgery back in May 2018. And I got told that it would take me like 12 months to properly get back into hockey side of things. And then I managed to get the call up in January 2019, and then we played in February. And I think it was even more special for me because I knew that I put in such hard work and hard shift to actually be able to get back onto the pitch. And then I found out that I was actually then going to go to Rome and play against Italy. I was just absolutely astounded that they would consider me. So it was really, really special, not only like representing my country, but like being just on the pitch. I just felt so privileged. So yeah, it was a very exciting time, and I was a bit emotional at my first speech at the end of the 3 test match series. I was, it was amazing, and I couldn't have done it with a bit better group of girls. So yeah, it was very cool.
Tron glasa gastaurig, chud an Seann Hastings class aerobic strach is doit on h-Alba. Root either a targunya mesal.
Everyone loved it. It was really rogue because it was just like music just playing in the street, and we were kind of just copying like my mom doing dance moves, like different, like, so she did like classes when she was younger and kind of knew the ropes about that. She's a better dancer than dad and I, to say the least. So she was like right in the front, and everybody would just copy her. And to begin with, we had to be quite careful because some of the older ones, they couldn't move as much or they weren't as good at that, which was like totally fine. So when dad got on the street, it was a bit intense, and all of us were like sweating, like it was so hard. And then we were like, actually, we need to tailor it back because we could get a couple of injuries and stuff. But people loved it. And actually people then started just like chatting to each other, checking in with each other. And if somebody didn't arrive at the class that day, we were like, oh, where were they? Mum would go and ring on the door and obviously make sure we're 2 meters away and stuff, and just check up. And it was not just physically, but mentally, it majorly helped our community. And we're still now so close, talking about having like a Christmas street party and stuff. It's just, yeah, it has been really, really good, both like physically and mentally. It's been fantastic.
Ha an cluicheadair hockey cúteach a tuair taith leis an image give to local. Ruta ha a gamas it corm an an spores a horse do a hulatinge.
They make sure they put funds into local communities so that they can actually bring about sport. So the likes of football, I'm sure they got basketball coming in. a bit of hockey, and there's just supporting different local heroes to try and push through the sports and actually increase their sport participation and make it more accessible for the communities who don't have as much in the facilities, and try and get them off the streets and everything. And I think it's absolutely brilliant, because one of the things, like, I like them supporting hockey because hockey isn't that accessible. It's quite an expensive sport with this equipment that you have to do, the hockey stick, shin pads, shoes, gum shields, a lot. Football's a wee bit easier because you can get a couple cones, get bibs, get a football, and then you can get people playing the games and stuff. So I think just in the northeast, they're really trying to drive the sporting community, because it's tailored off quite a bit, and it's not really being brought up and no money's being pumped into that. So very fortunate that they're actually supporting that charity and trying to really, really push through and increase the sport participation and accessibility.
As stiùideo eadar chorm sa scrum-nàiseanta aing, ha Kerry-Anne giri a lenting oral le a hoper crua, son an attrition a Còmhla.
Well, right now in COVID, it's just trying to enjoy my sport as much as possible and take the opportunity while I can. And my aim would hopefully try and get into the European team next year, who are competing in the European A division. And then following that, it'll be Commonwealth 2022. And if I could progress further from that, that'd be fantastic. But just to stay in the squad and try and be part of one of the senior leadership team members as well. So yeah, and bring about a good atmosphere within the Scottish hockey. We've got a really good community right now, and making it more accessible for the younger ones coming through, and let them enjoy the sport as much as like I have. So yeah, try and be a role model in that sense as well.
Louise, just even hearing Kerry-Anne speak there about sport, you really see just how much of a benefit it brings to so many people.
Absolutely. I think it doesn't, we speak so much about, particularly lately, the benefits of sport, physical activity to mental health and just overall well-being. It's crucial for young people in terms of getting in good habits from a young age, and can have such a lasting impact on people right through their life. So a huge role to play.
And as Kerry-Anne said, I mean, she feels lucky to have had so many different opportunities to try so many different sports. I mean, does it help coming from a very sporting background as a woman?
I think having a sporting background, or having parents that really support or understand the benefits of sport is huge. And they don't necessarily have to be kind of international athletes. They need to support young people to get involved, to get them to the right places, to pick them up if they've had a bad session or a bad training experience, and keep them in things. But I think positive role models across kind of sport, we're seeing more of them, and I think that does help to continue to inspire younger generations and absolutely keep people involved.
Because for you as a PE teacher, I mean, seeing girls come through the ages, was it difficult to get them involved and kind of keep them engaged?
I think previously we've seen a lot of reasons why girls and women drop out of sports at different points, and I think transitions from, if it's around about S4 age, kind of 16, sometimes it's between primary 7 and S1. There's lots of different reasons why kind of female participants particularly do drop out, and I think it's just the work that's been done across a whole range of sports to keep people engaged and really get them tied in and see the benefits of them will hopefully prevent that. And I think we have seen numbers growing across a range of sports, more accessible, and obviously starting from a young age with some of the work that the active schools teams do in primary schools, again keeping them involved and just developing them through a range of sports through their lifetimes.
Have you seen a change in kind of confidence and willingness to participate recently?
I think with not being in schools as much at the moment, with the kind of change of role working for Scottish Rugby, I think it's speaking to colleagues and I suppose seeing the amount of activity that we know that happens in schools, and because of the use of social media, you can see the different things that are being promoted, you can see the growth in a whole number of sports, and just the excitement around about national teams and the buy-in from young people there. But we've certainly seen a growth in the number of girls playing rugby from the under 12 age group right through to under 18, and hopefully that will continue to grow and continue to develop and support kind of the national team going forward.
Absolutely, thank you. Yn siach go migéireach, ha skipan an Albannach ar da gem jiribi chutramach o chluich si at the fiachar nu fain go euros fichit sa an assassin. Ach sé brisach dul mór a bhaun in Portugal agus fialan mar ha Alex O'Henley a garish.
Ash. Is de hoek alle statue vouwen van kutje voor Mitchell Coyet. Zijn BT en misschien toch weer prachtig. Suus. Bertje een pick and room geheen agus een uur pakket de schachate wat je tarsing. Nach Juice Skillishin voor een Cuthbert. Hansen, Iona Ballantyne, tarsing kolla. Chin for Kim Littleton, pick and room geheen agus je gekedi schachate de wat je tarsing. Agus shun gepasta allapa de heen. Ze hier het lezen de hier te lijn. Schau, wie is komt Giro en je Dana Silva, zo nog zijn. Cluicheadair Sconeto, cluicheadair Kerry-Anne Hastings de eerste. Portugal Còmhla dal Borges le cora me show agus had de line had de rugbaidh stocha mar vai Kiri agus hapurin te Lee Alexander tattigen me yo Iona Borges Portugal a chud hoiseach le tíach pick an spiket minach idakel. Gehoekele Chef, Thomas, die is chluicheadair, en Chechat de vast. Sinna Chef, Tarsinko, Martha Thomas, agus Savalo Mavo, Màiri Saniki Mach. Weer do Jechin, Idiish, Gejulupe, agus Jenny BT Chief, maar wij zich hier het le, agus, en ik zin voor 2 weken. Cuthbert, but we moet je ook zeggen, ze die is Màiri. Chef Hassel Marco Evans, even shot in de stuit, Hashin, Còmhla and Thomas. Oh, the God, I shouldn't have stayed. Lashoine Little, Lishaval, Tarsin Balna Share Evans, there's at the rookie of the shin. Nagasukcha, allowing Còmhla. Die is wel nerp, Jeugdchen verder, we moeten vast. Caramela, some Kim Little, Chili gemaakt in agus hier in een kleine val af Cuthbert, chluicheadair in de grillige agus Chechat, Kimmer nach de chin is de. Nerp beginnen de Caroline Weir agus naar O'Geary bal tuksem bekutjigen, Sisha J. Nu Caramela stoch Weir, Cuthbert agus boven na kele heen is zo in es, was er water de kele, agus stoch kere, which me gedig in a game set, Caramela on film line, Bristjuk, bij u geln in een vaart van een geln nele, dat het alle guts in de ping in de show, agus hadig alles tijd, als je toch retchen de bal, het je in het as van de man, de ranten en de hanik van de pinky, en je laat me wel in ranig, leth-chaigeann als njotje dat je de volle bal naar uit en aha, zo, gechtje, stootje van de pinky. In de game ben ik een chicken voor jedig, agus wel, kaartjes son Anna Signol, Suzanne, I'm not sure if she's delighted or sad, there's mixed emotions on the bench for Anna Signol there.
Yeah, no, I think she knows, you know, the Scotland players don't deserve this. They really don't. They put everything into this game tonight. And they deserve more out of it, and this is utter cruelty at the end, you know, to lose the game.
Louise, you can see the heartbreak on the players' faces at the end of that match there. I mean, how big a disappointment will this be for this team and for women's football?
I think, given where they've been in the qualification for the last 2 major tournaments, you know, you don't need to go over it, you don't need to look at that for long to see the impact that that's going to have on this group of players. I think what's the positive is that it's become an expectation that they qualify for major tournaments. What they obviously will be able to do in time after they recover from the disappointment of where they are right now is that they've got the 2 games that they can go and try and put on a good performance, just give their supporters, give themselves a lift to finish off that kind of qualification process, but then hopefully not let it sink back into a cycle of longer term non-qualification and actually, you know what, this is a blip, they've not qualified for this one, and hopefully be able to take it on and really focus on what they need to do, what they need to improve on to put themselves in the best possible place going forward.
Well, that's the thing, I guess, with their success and momentum in recent years, there was a lot of pressure kind of riding on their shoulders for this, wasn't there?
Absolutely. I was probably a perfect example of, after the World Cup qualification, somebody who had always paid attention to the women's national football team, but actually really started knowing exactly who the players were, where they'd been, what they'd been doing. And if we think of all the young footballers across the country, both male and female, that had that team to look up to in a World Cup, they've got all those supporters, they've still got them, they'll be wanting to see how they got on for the rest of, you know, for the next 2 games. Yes, they've not qualified, but they'll still want to see them going out and doing well, and hopefully the team remember that they've still got this whole raft of new fans and people who are holding them up as heroes, as they have been when they qualified for the previous tournaments, and just kind of perform for them over the next few games and try and then in time recover and set themselves again for the next qualification process.
And heartbreak as well, I guess, with missing out on a tournament so close to home.
Yeah, I kind of was fortunate to take part in a Rugby World Cup in England, and I think there's benefits of the amount of family support and the locality and having friends and family so close, and a lot of those players who play kind of down south anyway, it will be difficult for them because they'll not be able to escape from it. It'll be all over social media, it'll be all over the kind of the national media, and I think it's important that, you know, they stick together through that time and they don't let the disappointment of not being there kind of take over everything. They use that as the fuel to, you know, put themselves in a good place going forward to qualify for the next competition.
Do you think as well, I mean, just with the way that the world is at the moment, going through this pandemic, I mean, these players, there's so much going on outside football where the world is at home is so different. I mean, you're very isolated, you're not seeing friends and family as you would, your working day when you're training is completely different. Do you think that can have an impact even on their mental health going into these games?
I think it has to. I think it would be naive to say that, you know, any of these athletes that are taking part in sport at the moment are not going to be hugely affected. You look at the day-to-day impact of anyone, and if anybody's sitting at home, they know how they felt when they've been isolated or they've had to live their life very differently. And some of the sports people, because of the environments that they've had to protect, they've been able to do even less. So what they're further removed from their normal life, and that has to have an impact on them, you know, individually and collectively. So it's been hard for them. It's been hard for all the teams that have had to go through that. So, you know, hopefully we're getting towards an end of that, and they can move on to whatever kind of life will look like now.
Absolutely. And if we just move on to rugby, I mean, the Scotland team are close to World Cup qualification. They do have their qualification matches coming up. Do you think that's within reach for them? Absolutely.
I think the teams that they are going to be playing against, the change to the process that obviously had been announced with them playing, you know, Italy, Ireland, and then the winner of the European Championships, which is more than likely going to be Spain. These are all teams that Scotland can compete with and can do well against, and I think if anything the change of format has probably making 3 one-off games rather than home and away fixtures against what would have been Italy first. I think personally that's better for Scotland. They know that they've competed well and beaten Spain recently. They know that they've competed well and beaten Ireland within the last couple of seasons and then lost out in the Six Nations this year to an interception try in the final few minutes. They know that they can do well against those two teams. And Italy, I think, have become a little bit of a bogey team for Scotland over the last few seasons. However, I think there's elements to that how they approach that game will be critical. But they absolutely, with the quality in the squad at the moment, they can win that game. So there's 3 very winnable games, and obviously I think the teams can all beat each other. So I don't think, putting it out there, I don't think any team will go through unbeaten. I think it will be very close, and it could come down to a few points scored.
And we just have heard recently that in 2025 the World Cup will move from 12 teams to 16. What does that mean for even the competitiveness of the sport in rugby, that it's growing?
I think it's been coming for quite some time. I think World Rugby have probably managed that well in terms of when they've implemented that kind of increase into 16 teams. The format that they've had to run with it at various points with having 12 teams and to have a global representation has been difficult, because although they've wanted to make sure that the World Cup is real the focal point, it's a real highlight for the women's rugby calendar and showing off the best teams, because you're trying to get a global representation, sometimes there's still a bit of a gulf with the teams that end up being part of the competition. The increase to 16 teams actually will probably see some of the teams in that middle ground come in, and so teams that are kind of ranked quite kind of highly that potentially would have missed out, so they'll bring additional quality, they'll bring an additional challenge to some of the higher ranked teams. There'll be more games to think about, and there'll be different ways that they'll have to approach their pool matches, the whole overall qualification. But I think the fact that they can increase the number of teams, they can still maintain that global representation and they'll have a really clear and well thought out qualification process. I think it's great for the development of the game nationally and obviously across the world, and look forward to seeing Scotland being represented at World Cup soon.
Absolutely, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, sin air son program eile, ma hang voor de Louise son of colorrooms in studio. Fit de chef Arlental gach shachkin YouTube, mar sin jan keen shachkin een chef gewelle korte vrij, kan be chef Arlental agus nach calcium programs in B. Veel kan be chef naar kutjach en nach jachkin, de reviews toelige skielige nach een geuf voor sports voor nog na halbe. Maar sin live en draai.